Let's get into this shit. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sydney, and if you are new here, this is just a place where we can talk about true crime, spooky, scary stories, dark history, and anything I got going on in my brain. And today, we got a long case, so grab a little snack, grab a little drink, and let's get into today's story.
Hi there, friends. Editing me here. Ignore all of this. I am just popping in here to say that viewer discretion is advised today for this video. We are going to be talking about things like sexual violence and sexual assault. So if any of that is triggering to you or not okay for you, please take care of yourself. There will be other videos. I will miss you very much, but please take care of yourselves, okay? Thanks, guys. Let's get into the video.
Today we're going to be talking about the dramatic case of Virginia Rapp and Roscoe Arbuckle, or as he's better known as Fatty Arbuckle. So I'm going to be calling him Roscoe Arbuckle throughout the entirety of the video because Roscoe actually didn't like his stage name Fatty Arbuckle. He kind of used it because it fit his demeanor, it fit his comedy type, but it wasn't really him. So just out of respect for Roscoe, I'm just going to be calling him by his given name. Roscoe Arbuckle was born on March 24th, 1887 in Kansas. His family moved to Santa Ana, California when he was about 2 years old, and from the very start of his life, he was very talented. From ages 8 to 11, Roscoe actually got work through Frank Bacon and his company, but just because Roscoe was very talented didn't mean that he had a peachy, happy childhood. When Roscoe was 12 years old, his mother passed away, and his father, from what I could tell, was abusive and didn't really want to be a part of Roscoe's life in any way. From what I could find, it seemed like Roscoe's dad didn't really believe that Roscoe was his son. So after his mother died, Roscoe was basically forced into work because his father wouldn't take care of him. He learned from a very young age what it meant to be a hard worker. Roscoe had a few odd jobs here and there before he actually started his real career in vaudeville. So if you don't know, vaudeville, and I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, is a mixture of acting, singing, comedy, and dancing, and it originated in France. He continued to perform in these groups until his first acting gig on screen in 1909. In 1913, Roscoe joined on to Keystone Studios and acted in 36 different short films. What's really interesting is during this time, Charlie Chaplin actually got signed on to Keystone Studios as well, and Roscoe and Charlie Chaplin starred in 7 short films together. By 1914, Roscoe's career had skyrocketed. Arbuckle and his co-star Mabel Normand actually cut a deal with Paramount Pictures in 1914 for $1,000 a day and 25% of all revenue brought in by the films that they made. On top of that, they also got complete artistic control, which, if you know anything about Hollywood, that wasn't usually very easy to come by, so that was a big perk of this deal as well. Their movies proved to be so popular that in 1918, Paramount Pictures actually offered them a $3 million deal for a 3-year contract, which Arbuckle happily accepted. What made Roscoe Arbuckle stand out from the crowd with his acting skills was how agile and flexible he was on screen. Although Roscoe was around 300 pounds, he was able to have these gymnast-like stunts and run around like it was nothing, and this made him very popular in the silent movie era. He was also known for the famous pie in the face gag. In fact, he and his co-star Mabel were actually the first known actors to do this gag on screen in 1913. So in September of 1921, Roscoe and 2 of his friends decided to take a little mini vacation to San Francisco. So the boys got 3 hotel rooms at the lavish St. Francis Hotel. 2 of them they were going to use for like sleeping and relaxing, and then 1 of them they were going to use as specifically just a party room. Obviously, the boys invited a bunch of people over to party at the hotel, and one of these partygoers was actually a 25-year-old woman named Virginia Rapp. She was an aspiring actress, model, and clothing designer. The partygoers arrived around noon on that day, and later in the day, Virginia was actually found very, very ill in one of the hotel rooms. Virginia was quickly seen by the hotel doctor, who just thought she was very intoxicated and just gave her some morphine to hopefully mellow her out. Unfortunately, though, Rapp's condition did not improve, and she was soon admitted to the hospital about 2 days later. Virginia's friend, Bambina Maud Delmont, told the doctors that Virginia had been raped by Arbuckle, and that is what was causing her illness. The doctors then tested Virginia for signs of rape, but they didn't see anything and they couldn't really determine what had actually happened. Despite being in the care of doctors, Virginia unfortunately passed away a day after arriving at the hospital, and her death was determined to be caused by a ruptured bladder caused by peritonitis. The doctors concluded that her condition and her death had been caused by her frequent UTIs exasperated by her frequent alcohol consumption. Virginia's friend Delmont quickly went to the police after Virginia's death and told them that Roscoe Arbuckle had raped and basically killed her friend. Delmont also said that she heard Arbuckle saying to Virginia, "I've been trying to get you for 5 years." The police came to the conclusion that Roscoe's overpowering weight on Virginia while he was assaulting her must have caused her bladder to rupture. The following day, Arbuckle actually turned himself into the police. He kept saying that he was innocent, but he just didn't want anyone to think that he would have done this. However, once the press caught wind of this story, they took it and they absolutely ran with it. This event took place during the time of yellow journalism. Well, this type of journalism sold a lot of papers and had a lot of eye-catching titles and things like that. It didn't really portray the actual truth of the story. We can actually sometimes see something similar to yellow journalism in those like grocery store tabloids that you can see when you're checking out. I'd say that's probably the closest thing we have to yellow journalism today. Unfortunately, Roscoe's friends and co-stars, since they were all involved in the movie industry, weren't really able to speak out about how they were feeling or what they thought about this entire story that was going on. As you can probably guess, most of Roscoe's acquaintances worked in studios and worked for companies under contracts, and these places didn't want to be connected to Roscoe in any way during this time. That being said, a few brave people did speak out. For example, Charlie Chaplin actually spoke out saying that he knew Roscoe to be an easygoing type that would not harm a fly. And Buster Keaton, who was another friend and co-star of Roscoe Arbuckle, actually got in trouble with the studio that he was working with because he did speak out, and he said that Roscoe would never do such a thing. Near the end of 1922, Roscoe was indicted and charged with manslaughter. The prosecutor of this case was San Francisco District Attorney Matthew Brady. Brady was actually trying to get into the world of politics and run for governor, so he thought that this clusterfuck of a case would be the perfect opportunity for him to gain votes. So this preliminary trial was full of drama. Brady went into this trial seeking the death penalty, okay? He was going in cutthroat. During this trial, a partygoer testified against Arbuckle saying Virginia had told her Arbuckle had hurt her, and this was right before she died. But the good thing was that Arbuckle had a great defense attorney, and his name was Gavin McNabb. McNabb was literally always there for Arbuckle, and he seemed to always have a comeback or a clapback to Brady's shitty tactics and his false witness statements. McNabb got a letter from Virginia's friend, Bambina Delmont, if you remember her, saying that she had always planned to use Virginia's story to extort Arbuckle. And it turns out that this was actually a very common trend for Delmont. Her whole thing was extorting rich and famous people for their money, which is super shitty, first of all, to take somebody's death and twist it into a story that it's not, but also to just bring Arbuckle into all of this. Whether or not he did anything to Virginia has always been up in the air, but if he didn't do anything and she just dragged him into this and basically ruined his career, I mean, my God, What a shitty human being. So the judge at the preliminary trial decided to charge Arbuckle with first-degree murder. However, his sentence was later reduced just down to manslaughter. So Roscoe spent about 3 weeks in jail before he was able to get out on bail, and the first trial officially started on November 14th of 1921. The prosecution had a lot of different witnesses during this first trial. These witnesses included a model who was at the party, the hotel's doctor, a local criminologist, and a nurse that treated Virginia at the hospital. The model testified that she saw Arbuckle happy and smiling and having a great time at the party, and this was just mere hours after the alleged assault had taken place. The hotel doctor testified that he believed that something external had actually damaged Virginia's bladder that night. The local criminologist stated that the fingerprints that they had taken off the door that night painted a very gruesome picture. Allegedly, the way that the fingerprints were on the doorknob was that Virginia's fingerprints were on there and then Arbuckle's were on top, almost like he had prevented her from escaping the room. And the nurse that treated Virginia said that she saw bruises and injuries that suggested that Roscoe Arbuckle had indeed assaulted Virginia that night. During the cross-examination of these witnesses, Gavin McNabb was able to kind of uncover some small lies within the testimonies that they'd made. McNabb was able to uncover that the hotel doctor never heard from Virginia herself that she had gotten raped. I feel like you would tell your doctor, especially if you're being treated for like abdominal things, you know? Maybe that's just me. I've never been in a situation like that, so I don't know. Maybe you wouldn't tell your doctor, especially if it was a male doctor, maybe you wouldn't, but it just seems kind of sus. Additionally, McNabb was able to bring in his own witness, who was a maid that worked at the St. Francis Hotel. This maid testified that she had actually cleaned all of the rooms before the investigation had started, which brings question to the criminologist and what they found at the crime scene, especially if the room had been thoroughly cleaned. It kind of just brings into question the whole fingerprint thing, and we'll get into that a little bit more later too. It was also revealed that the nurse was actually threatened by Matthew Brady in order to make a false testimony during the trial, which is super fucked up. Even Virginia's autopsy was brought up during this time, and from what the evidence showed, it didn't look like Virginia had been assaulted or harmed in any way before her death. All in all, there were 19 different medical professionals that testified during this trial. So a lot of good information came to light about Virginia's case and her illness. On the last day of the trial, Roscoe Arbuckle himself took the stand, a bold but necessary move. And basically Roscoe just told his side of the story. So allegedly Virginia and many other partygoers went up to the room around noon on September 5th of 1921. Roscoe stated that he had known Virginia for about 5 years, but he knew nothing about her illness. Later that day, Roscoe went into his own room to change and get ready to take a different partygoer into town, and this is when he found Virginia on his bathroom floor throwing up. Virginia told Arbuckle that she wasn't feeling too hot, and Arbuckle actually helped her to his bed in order to lay down and get some rest. He then gathered a couple different partygoers to just take care of Virginia and watch over her while he was gone in town. When everybody got back to Roscoe's room, they found Virginia on the floor, tearing at her clothes and convulsing violently. People that were in the room at the time helped her move into a bathtub of cold water, thinking that she was just very intoxicated and that she needed to calm down, and this was a popular way to do that in the 1920s. After they had safely moved her to the bathtub, they called the hotel doctor to come up and just make sure that she was okay. Arbuckle, assuming that this whole thing wasn't all that serious, then left to go into town. During the cross-examination, Matthew Brady hounded Arbuckle, just trying to get him to crack in any way, shape, or form, but Roscoe stayed very calm and collected, and he was just trying to get the facts across the best way he could. He stated over and over again that he would never make any sexual advances towards a woman, especially not without their consent. After a grueling 2-week trial and 44 hours of debating, the jury finally came back and they were deadlocked, 10 not guilty, 2 guilty. The judge had no choice but to declare a mistrial. The second trial started in January of 1922 with a brand new jury in hopes of coming to a unanimous decision. Most of the witnesses and the evidence remained the same from the first trial to the second trial. However, there were a few small changes. For example, one of the prosecution's witnesses came forward during the second trial saying that Matthew Brady had basically forced her to lie on the stand during that first trial. Another witness during the first trial, which was a security guard for one of the studios in the area, had originally stated that Roscoe Arbuckle came up to him and was asking for the dressing room keys for Virginia. Evidently, Arbuckle had told the security guard that he wanted the keys because he wanted to play a prank on Virginia. And obviously the security guard was like, "No, I'm not letting you into Virginia's dressing room, you creepy creep." During the second trial, though, it came out that this witness, this security guard, had lied on the stand during the first trial in order to get a reduced sentence. A reduced sentence. Yes, this witness was actually a convicted criminal who was charged for assaulting an 8-year-old girl. What is this? And Matthew Brady had offered him a reduced sentence in order to make up this story about Roscoe. So like I said earlier, during this trial, the validity of the fingerprint evidence from the first trial was brought up. So what's interesting is that the criminologist that was on the prosecution side during the first trial actually flipped over to the defense's side for the second trial, saying that the evidence that they found at the scene of the crime wasn't that strong. Hey girl. No, don't move that. Please don't move that. Why are you obsessed with the camera stand? Also, I apologize if the camera angle has now shifted quite a bit. My cats were like being cats, and so I apologize for that. Please forgive me. So during this trial, Virginia's character was brought up quite a bit. Virginia grew up in a time where being a strong woman was kind of like in. It was the era of like the flapper girl, and there was a lot of drinking. There was a lot of partying, and Virginia was just taking part of this culture. And so her character was kind of brought up in a negative light, and that's really sad because she kind of died twice. She died in that hospital bed, and then she died on the stand as well. And although I think it may have been seen as an important part of the trial to bring up the fact that Roscoe didn't do anything, that it was maybe her own decisions that had caused her death, I think it's sad that they did it in such a way that made her look like a bad person or a promiscuous person, because I don't really think that's who she was. But anyway, during this second trial, the defense was so confident that the jury would make the right decision, would not convict Arbuckle, that they didn't even have Roscoe take the stand, which proved to be a mistake. The jury actually thought that Roscoe not taking a stand during the second trial made him look more guilty. Well, this trial was much shorter. The jury again debated for about 44 hours, and the verdict came back as 10 guilty to not guilty. The judge again declared another mistrial. So the third trial started in March of 1922, and Gavin McNabb took no chances during this trial. He decided to be as cutthroat as possible. He brought to light that one of the prosecution's witnesses couldn't be at the trial because she was actively evading the police. It turned out that she was just very sick of testifying in so many trials, and she was really stressed out, so she had escaped to New Orleans to just kind of avoid the craziness of the trial. But McNabb used this to his advantage, saying like, kind of funny how your witness isn't here, 'cause she's evading the police. McNabb also talked about Bambina Del Monte again, and how she basically lied to not only Matthew Brady but the entire world that she had witnessed this horrendous crime and the aftermath of it, when in reality she was just a liar and an extorter. And the defense learned their lesson from the last trial, and so Arbuckle again got up on the stand, told his story, was very heartfelt and honest with the jury about how he believed that he was innocent. So the jury deliberated for about 5-6 minutes, and they came back with their verdict. Not only that, but they had actually taken most of the time that they were deliberating to write a letter to Arbuckle himself. Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel that a great injustice has been done him. We feel also that it was only our plain duty to give him this exoneration under the evidence, for there was not the slightest proof to connect him in any way with the commission of a crime. He was manly throughout the case and told a straightforward story on the witness stand, which we all believed. The happening at the hotel was an unfortunate affair which Arbuckle, so the evidence shows, was in no way responsible. We wish him success and hope that the American people will take the judgment of 14 men and women who have sat listening for 31 days to evidence that Roscoe Arbuckle is entirely innocent and free from all blame. So with that, Roscoe Arbuckle was acquitted and was officially a free man. However, he was charged a $500 fine for breaking the Volstead Act, which was basically just because he had alcohol in the hotel room and it was prohibition. Unfortunately, though, Roscoe had acquired about $700,000 in legal fees, which is about $12 million today. So during his trials, Roscoe's movies had been banned almost everywhere. And for a little bit after his acquittal, Roscoe himself was banned from making any new movies. The ban was soon lifted, but it didn't really matter because Roscoe wasn't going to get much work anyway. It really is a shame because a lot of his movies that had been made before this whole fiasco, there aren't surviving copies of it because preservation of silent movies isn't great to begin with, but then if you just ban movies, they're not going to get saved. And so unfortunately, we don't have a lot of footage of Roscoe Arbuckle. There is, however, one feature-length film called Leap Year, and it was actually released in Europe only, and so there is a few surviving copies of that particular film. So in 1922, Buster Keaton actually signed Arbuckle onto his company and gave him 35% of all future profits. Arbuckle also directed a number of scenes, starred in some movies, and also wrote some of the scripts as well. However, the public still seemed a little bit divided. There were people that just seemed like they were never going to forgive Roscoe Arbuckle. But then there were people like James R. Quirk, who was a journalist at the time, that had this to say about Roscoe. I would like to see Roscoe Arbuckle make a comeback to the screen. The American nation prides itself upon its spirit of fair play. We like the whole world to look upon America as the place where every man gets a square deal. Are you sure Roscoe Arbuckle is getting one today? I'm not. From 1924 to 1932, Roscoe Arbuckle actually was a director under the pseudonym William B. Goodrich. Additionally, from 1928 to 1930, Roscoe Arbuckle co-owned a club called the Plantation Cafe. Problematic name. It's okay, it shut down because of the Great Depression and the stock market crash. So, kind of a blessing in disguise because that's a horrible name for a club. Different time, different place. We'll move along. Finally, in 1932, Roscoe signed a deal with Warner Brothers to make 6 short films. These films actually proved to be quite successful in the United States. However, the UK, Europe side of things they were a little bit more hesitant. They banned these films. They didn't want anything to do with Roscoe anymore. But the United States seemed to have kind of a turning point. They seemed to like Roscoe again. Fun little fact, these shorts are the only movies to actually have Roscoe Arbuckle's voice. So I thought that was really cool. In June of 1933, Roscoe had just finished filming the last little bit of these 6 short films, and he had signed a contract with Warner Brothers for a full-length feature film. Yeah, full comeback, baby. That night, he went out with his friends to celebrate the signing of this big contract, as well as his first-year anniversary with his third wife, Addie MacPhail. His friends stated that he had said that night that that day had been the best day of his entire life. And that night, Roscoe Arbuckle passed away from a heart attack in his sleep at age 46. So I think we can say with some amount of certainty that Roscoe Arbuckle didn't really have a hand in Virginia Rapp's death. I think from what we know today and the evidence of it was even brought up in the trials back then, I think it's really sad that this talented young woman passed away so young. However, I don't really see the evidence that, points to Roscoe in any way. It's sad how his name kind of, like I said before, got drug through the mud, especially since he was such a talented actor. And a lot of the famous silent movie stars really changed the way that we look at movies. And it's a very important part of our film history. In some ways, this case actually reminded me of the staircase murder, although it is quite different. Just like the convoluted trial was giving me staircase vibes the whole time. Like, there was just evidence and lies coming in left, right, left, right. It's just crazy. This case, I feel like, is definitely the staircase murder of the 20th century. But anyway, I feel like I have blathered on for long enough. If you enjoyed this case and this story, please feel free to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want. But other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Get outside, enjoy the nice weather before it's winter time again, and I will talk to you guys soon. Keep being, keep being the bad bitches that you are. Bye, guys.